Good morning. My name is Tony Bevilacqua. I'm the founder and CEO of cognitiveVR. We focus on analytics for virtual, augmented, and mixed reality. I'm going to step about 3, maybe 4 steps back from the technical and talk about some more high-level concepts today with regards to how you can garner analytical insights from the new hardware and these new devices that are available on the market, and how that's a bit different from what we've seen in kind of mobile platforms and other things that have been available up until this point. We started our company back in November 2015. We're based in Vancouver, had an analytics company before this, and what we really realized when we started building this technology is that, you know, while we had kind of established paradigms in analytics for web and mobile, we started trying to build product, you know, with those paradigms in mind. And, you know, what we really realized was, you know, these devices are fundamentally different, and, you know, unlike some of the other applications where, you know, in a mobile device you're trying to understand how somebody moves through perhaps a funnel or a process, users have a lot of agency to contribute to the experience and make a dynamic experience within an environment, and we needed new capabilities to be able to understand the context of users' individuality inside of these experiences. So if we think about the different types of things that we could monitor in these experiences, in web we were thinking about, you know, clicks, typing, mouse movement, you know, those types of things. Apps, we were worried about touches and taps and slides, camera engagement, engagement of the gyroscope, those types of insights. And in extended realities, we're looking more on gaze and eye tracking and path. How does the user's physical movement as they move throughout a space, you know, how is that context to the types of insights we're trying to garner? And that also kind of funnels down to that ultimate, you know, kind of paradigm, being able to understand how emotion may factor into some of the elements or some of the content that's being consumed by the end user. So what can we measure in extended reality? So the first thing that we, you know, obviously focused on was gaze, and being able to understand, you know, from, you know, the basic headset perspective, the ability to understand head position and map that to depth perception and being able to understand what people are looking at inside of a 3D space. But it's taken a step further when you add a retinal tracker into the equation, and retinal tracking is actually something that is available for the Vive and the Oculus. It's just an aftermarket feature. But if you're doing closed research, it's something that's actually pretty available, and, you know, as long as what you're doing is high value, it makes a lot of sense. We can also track the user's path, so the user's relative location within a room scale environment, so how they move through that environment, as well as how they move through virtual space, right? So how they're teleporting around a particular environment and how that relates to room scale. We can also collect event-based telemetry, which is pretty typical in web and mobile, but where it gets different in extended realities is we have the ability to have spatial context of where things are happening, right? So if we think about, you know, event telemetry, a user picking up an item or making a purchase or you know, leaving the experience, the actual location of that event is actually way more important than it did the event occur. And it's something that we can track in great levels of detail. We also have the ability to ingest different types of sensor data. So we talked about retinal, but we could also do things like heart rate, galvanic skin response, you know, respiration, those types of things, to be able to try to track the user's physical state with the content that they are consuming, as well as things like your standard metrics, right? So you get session time, duration, that sort of thing. And one of the things we realized when we started collecting this data is the visualization was just bad. Like we had, you know, these charts and graphs and other types of things that we were trying to measure. These were kind of the typical outputs of these experiences, and the visualization models that we had just didn't work very well. What we really needed to do is visualize that content within, visualize those insights within the experience that they were collected. So we'll talk a little bit about our tool later on in the discussion, but the idea here being that the visual context of where the data is collected is probably the most important aspect when you're talking about experiential data. So we work in, you know, kind of this umbrella of consumer research. You know, we originally started games and entertainment, and where we found great fit is where the data is low in quantity and incredibly high in value. And one of the fits that we've found in our space is automotive. So being able to collect insights from maybe a product development process or something along a, you know, consumer process. So there's a few different ways that we've done that. In this particular case, there's a few different ways that the automotive industry is using VR or AR. They use immersive vehicle experiences. They use training scenarios. They do manufacturing line configuration applications. They've got a lot of different types of use cases. But we can add a lot of value by recording engagement inside of these things and determine issues or problems with health and safety. What particular elements of a dashboard resonated most with a particular set of consumers, which elements of the vehicle resonated with your group of users as well. And ultimately, this can be iterated upon rapidly because we're not dealing with physical prototypes and we're taking assets off an existing asset pipeline, rendering it inside of VR. We can go make that change and then put a new set of users in, record that data, and then use those hypotheses to turn over another prototype or another revision. So the automotive industry is a great example of where product development can be advanced forward by not just the visualization element, but also being able to take those analytical and data insights into the equation as well. The next one is really around retail and CPG. So this is more on consumer packaged goods, being able to look at specific users and kind of a user research type of use case. So we see a lot of interesting testing scenarios. So being able to measure, configurations of planograms within a particular experience, being able to understand user process and decision-making process as somebody moves through a virtual environment, being able to identify high-performing packaging and how packaging may, contribute to the selection within a particular planogram. And also being able to identify traits of packaging that are most important for your users. If you can track, what the user picked up and how they articulated it, and did they pay attention to the nutrition? Not only that, but can we see what elements of the nutrition label they paid attention to? These things were typically done with clipboards after the fact, after the experience. We can collect this information quantitatively now. So let's talk about what we built. We kind of started off in that quantitative space where like, okay, let's build some dashboards. We're going to take all this data off the headset. We're going to install our SDK, and we're going to take a look at those, try to identify, specific insights within it. What we found pretty quickly is that visual indicators were very important, being able to understand, the visual context of where things were happening within an experience. We started building a tool called Scene Explorer. And the last piece of it is being able to couple that with qualitative insights. So being able to capture the user's state of mind, their particular sentiment towards a particular experience, either beforehand in the experience, in the middle, or at the end. As well as any other types of indicators you might want to collect, including user properties, parameters. So we built these three tools. You got Exapol, which gives you kind of that qualitative capability to be able to raise the issues that are most important to the user. Couple that with Scene Explorer, which is about the visual kind of elements of the experience, of where things are happening. You use that tool to be able to develop hypotheses, and you take those hypotheses into the dashboard to be able to validate that issue at scale on an aggregated basis. Give you a quick video. Can we hit play on the video? Oh, can we go back one? You can close the presentation, or just go back to the window size and play the video there. It's fine. It is important to see the video. Alrighty. Anyway, what he's going to show is basically we have a visualization tool called Scene Explorer. Allows you to collect data from individual user experiences. SDK sits inside of Unity or Unreal. Automatically collects telemetry on user head position, hand controllers, event-based telemetry, sensor data, and then maps that into a WebGL experience that we run directly inside the browser. So we actually take a decimated version of your entire scene, put it into WebGL, and then you have the capability to then visualize that scene in the browser with the data mapped on top of it. You can look at it from an individual basis, but then you can also look at it from an aggregated basis as well. Cool. No luck with the video? No, okay. Can we go back to the other video then? Cool. The second tool is called exit poll, and exit poll is all about collecting qualitative feedback. So being able to pop up polling questions within the experience, either true or false, happy, sad, up and down. You can do scale-based questions, multiple choice, but we also have the ability to capture voice feedback. So if you have a different testing battery, consumer research that you're doing, this is a great way to be able to capture qualitative insights alongside the quantitative visual telemetry. Unfortunately, we don't have the video for Scene Explorer. Is probably the coolest part of what we do. We have a booth down on the expo floor, 638, which is in the tools section. We have a full demo with a Rift, and you can try it out, and then also see your data available right there after the fact. So come and take a look at it. And the SDK is free to try out, so we work with Unity, Unreal. It's very simple to install. It's just a plugin that you import inside of Unity. Unreal is a bit more of a heavy lift, but it usually is for everything. You can get that from cognitiveVR.co. Cool. Thank you.
All right, we have several minutes for some questions. We can bring up submissions.
Okay, so we've had a few, we've had over 250 different applications run through our system so far. It's actually more than that, it's like 275 now. There's a lot of different use cases, so we started in games and entertainment, so we've had thousands and thousands of users come through the platform, and then we started building a lot of aggregation tools to be able to build, relevant insights from that, because what we found was looking at individual users can be important when the stakeholder is important and potentially individual user process is important, but on an aggregated basis, you need to, or at scale, you need to aggregate many thousands of users. Does it seem to reflect user experience after you asked? So the insights that we typically garner are workflow issues, specifically when you're talking about games and entertainment, so being able to identify how somebody moved through a particular process or experience. The types of insights that we try to garner are, what particular elements drew the most user experience and how we might be able to optimize that experience moving forward. Data is collected in a cloud-based infrastructure. We can also do on-prem, so we can deploy a server into your facility to be able to host it privately. The cloud-based infrastructure is dedicated data store, so if you're somewhat worried about data privacy, you could host it in the cloud. If you're really worried about data privacy, you'd go on-prem. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.